Okay, we're going to look at the set of 4 problems right here. This is the Are You Ready quiz on 7-1. Looking at this, we got a rectangle that's 7 by 24. The diagonal is what they want to know. What is x? I'm going to set this up because opposite sides are going to be congruent. This is 24. We have a right triangle, 7 by 24. We're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve that. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. The c is the hypotenuse. That's your x. A can be either one of these. B has to be the other. Type this in your calculator here, and you'll get 625 once you sum those up. 7 squared plus 24 squared. At this point, we still want to solve for x. We have a square. We have to counter the square, and the way we counter is with square roots. And I take the square root of 625. I get that x equals 25. So that missing side, the diagonal, is 25 units long. Part 2, we want to find the value of x. So we got a trapezoid, and it's an isosceles trapezoid because the legs are congruent. They're both 17. So as we look at what actually makes up this trapezoid, we have a rectangle here that's 13 by 15, and then we have 2 right triangles. In order to find x, the length of this whole side, we have to break this up, find out what this piece is here, and that will be the same as this piece here. The middle is going to be the same as the 13 because opposite sides are parallel in a rectangle. So we have to do a Pythagorean theorem problem and find what is the length of this leg of this right triangle. If I label C, A, and B, use the Pythagorean theorem, 17 squared equals 15 squared plus b squared. I'll leave it as b, looking for that little piece. So now we have to do 17 squared, okay? Don't feel bad, use a calculator on these. 17 squared, hit enter, it's 289. 15 squared is 225. So as I look at this, I get 289 equals 225 plus b squared. I want to take the steps to isolate my b. That's the variable I'm solving for. Subtract 225 from both sides. 289 subtract 225 is 64, and that will equal the b squared. And just like we do on every single Pythagorean theorem problem, we don't want b squared. We don't want x squared over here. Counter the square with the square root. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. 64, the square root of 64 is 8. We're not done. That is the length of that leg of the right triangle. A congruent triangle right over here, this leg is 8 also. So the total length for x, the total length there, 8 plus 8 plus 13. 8 plus 8 is 16. Plus 13 equals 29. X equals 29. Another trapezoid. Biggest mistake off of this one is that we try to figure out, here's the right triangle that we want to use to solve. And you're going to take this 34, and the biggest mistake you can make is to assume that this is half of 34 and write down 17. That's not the case. Don't do that. If you notice that this is a rectangle with a side of 10, that means that this side has to be 10 here. What's left out of that 34 now? That would be 24. So we have a Pythagorean theorem problem, C, A, and B. Like here, A and B don't matter. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. It's 25 squared equals 24 squared plus X squared. 25 squared is 625. 24 squared is 576. And now we want to solve for x. We want to isolate the x. Subtract 576 from both sides. You get 49 equals x squared. Squared, counter it with the square root, and you get 7 equals x, the length there. I've said a lot of things in class about not assuming information off of the picture. Once again, don't cut the 34 in half. Look at what the diagram's telling you. This is 10. That has to be 24. Also, once you come to the conclusion that x is 7, this leg looks longer than the 24. Go by the information that is given, not by what the picture looks like. On 4, find the length of the side of a square which has a diagonal with a length of 14. So you have a square. All of the angles are 90. The diagonal is going to bisect. Remember that off of our vocabulary. Bisect is cut it exactly in half into a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So we have that the diagonal is 14 units long. Off of this, if I go back and just solve this as a 45, 45, 90 triangle, I have that x square root of 2 has to equal 14. I'm going to have to do that special rule to solve this. Instead of multiplying these two out, I want to counter the square root of 2. Multiplication and division counter each other out. So divide by the square root of 2. What we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. This is where we have a square root on the bottom of a fraction. We're not allowed to have those. We need to clean this up. We're going to take that number right there, the square root of 2. We're going to multiply the top by it, and we're going to multiply the bottom by it. Now remember, that value is only 1. We are not changing the value here. Across the top, 14 square root of 2. Along the bottom, square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is 2. One last step, 14 divided by 2. We can simplify that right there. X will equal 7 square root of 2. Okay, the are you ready part for the 7-2. The question here is, before we can ever start, is it a triangle? These are 3 lengths. Your 2 smaller ones and your longest. We need to determine first, before we can move any further, is this a triangle? And the way that we do that is A plus B has to be greater than C. In this case, it would be 6 plus 6. Is 6 plus 6 greater than 12? No. 12 is not greater than 12. They're equal. So this one does not make a triangle. If we look over here, our A and our B, 15 is the C. 9 plus 12, is that greater than 15? 9 plus 12 is 21. Is that greater than 15? Yes. This is a triangle. That's the first phase. Once we determine if it's a triangle, now we're going to use Pythagorean theorem. Instead of using an equal sign, we're going to put a comparison box there. And whatever goes in here will let us know if it's an acute, a right, and an obtuse. And you can remember that with the box, if it's equal, it's a right. If we put a less than sign, it's acute. And if we put a greater than sign, it's obtuse. So now, plug in our values. 15 squared compared to 9 squared plus 12 squared. 15 squared is 225. 9 squared is 81. 12 squared is 144. I'm going to add these two together. and I get 225 compared to 225. An equal sign goes in the box. And going off of our tool right here, equal tells us that this is a right triangle. All right, I hope you took good notes on that. Put that aside. You're going to be able to use this on your quiz later today.